The coffee shop on 3rd Street wasn't special. It had chipped paint on the side window and the same tired jazz playlist looping since February. But something about that morning felt different. The sky was gray but soft. The streets were quieter than usual. And inside the cafe, behind the counter with a name tag that read, Mila, a young woman with paint under her nails tried to stay awake after her second double shift in a row. She didn't see him come in at first. She was distracted by a loud hiss of the espresso machine and the way the foam kept bubbling unevenly. She wiped her hands on her apron, glanced up, and there he was, standing in front of her like he had all the time in the world. Black jacket, quiet eyes, and yes, the longest hair she'd seen on a customer that week. Mila blinked. It took her a second. Then she tilted her head and grinned. "You look like you wrestled a windstorm, man." Keanu Reeves smiled, slow, kind. Not surprised, not offended. "Yeah," he said softly. "The wind won." Mila laughed louder than she meant to. She immediately put a hand over her mouth. "Sorry, I didn't mean it bad. It's just a no. Kind of a wild look." Keanu nodded. "I get that a lot. Most celebrities would have turned away. They would have pulled their hood down, ordered fast, and disappeared. But not him." He leaned slightly on the counter, eyes not scanning for cameras or watching the clock. He looked right at her. "You work here often?" Mila blinked again. Was he really asking her a question? Did Keanu Reeves just start a conversation? "Yeah, 6 days a week. Sometimes 7. Must be exhausting." She shrugged, beat sitting at home. "Plus I get free caffeine and weird customers." He smiled again. Softer this time. His eyes moved toward the corner of the counter where a small sketchbook sat open beside the register. There was a rough pencil drawing of a woman sitting alone at a train station. The detail was raw, emotional, unfinished, but powerful. "Did you draw this?" he asked. Mila hesitated. "Yeah, just something I scribbled on break. It's beautiful. 2 words, no exaggeration, no polite compliment, just to be nice." Said it like it mattered. Like he really saw it. Mila felt her throat tighten. "Thanks. I don't really show it to people." "You should," he said gently. "You really should." She looked at him closely now. He wasn't being polite. He wasn't just famous. He was paying attention. And that, more than the compliment, shook her. She nodded toward the register. "What can I get you?" "Anything with cinnamon," he said. She laughed. "Cinnamon it is." As she made the drink, she kept stealing glances. At him, not in the way fans do when they're awestruck, but like someone watching someone else just exist, quiet, patient, real. When she handed him the cup, he read the name written on the side. "Mila," he said, like he wanted to remember it. "Keanu," she replied, pretending she hadn't known. He gave a small wave, took the drink, and stepped to the side, but he didn't leave. Instead, he walked over to the corner table by the window. The one that always stayed empty because the leg wobbled and the view faced a construction site. He sat down, pulled out a notebook from his coat, and began writing. Mila kept working. She helped the next few customers, wiped the counters, and tried not to keep staring. But every time she glanced back, he was still there, writing, occasionally sipping, eyes scanning the page with the kind of stillness she hadn't seen in a long time. An hour passed. He was still there. 2 hours. Still. Their customers came and went. Some recognized him. Others didn't. A few whispered, but no one approached. Maybe it was the way he sat. Calm, but distant. Maybe it was respect. Maybe something else. At one point, Mila walked over quietly and refilled his cup without asking. He looked up and smiled. "Thanks." He said. "You're still here," she replied. "Yeah," he said. "It's quieter here than most places." She sat down for a second beside him. Not to bother, just to breathe. "What are you writing?" she asked. "Just thoughts," he said. "Memories, pieces of things. Is it for a movie?" He shook his head. For me, they sat in silence. Not awkward, just simple. Then Keanu reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded paper. He laid it flat and showed her a small charcoal sketch. It was of a street corner in New York. Rough lines, bold shadows, deeply human. "This one's mine," he said. Mila stared at it. "You draw?" "Sometimes I need to say something I can't put into words." She swallowed. It's kind of what it's like for me too." And just like that, a stranger became something more. Not because he was famous, but because he listened. He saw, and he stayed. Mila didn't know then that this day would change everything. She didn't know that tomorrow someone would post a blurry photo of Keanu sitting in that wobbly chair, and it would go viral. She didn't know that her sketchbook would be seen by millions, or that an offer would come in less than a week that would leave her speechless. All she knew in that moment was that he was kind, and sometimes that was more powerful than fame. The next morning, Mila showed up for work 10 minutes early. She never did that, usually. She walked in with her earbuds half in and her apron still in her bag. But today felt strange, like the air carried something it didn't yesterday. Not tension, just possibility. She kept looking at the table by the window, the one with the wobbly leg. It was empty. She didn't know why that made her heart sink a little. He might not come back, she told herself. People like him move through cities like wind. They're here, and then they're gone. They don't stick around for the same coffee. Twice still, she refilled the cinnamon container, just in case. By 11, the cafe was full. Customers leaned into laptops. Others flipped through newspapers like it was still 1995. Mila worked the register, her eyes darting toward the door more times than she wanted to admit. But then, without any announcement, he walked in again. Same. Black coat. Same quiet steps, same calm expression, and the same wild hair she had teased him about. Yesterday, Mila tried not to smile too hard. The wind still winning. She asked as he reached the counter. He gave a soft chuckle. Barely survived this time. She didn't ask what he wanted. She already had the cinnamon brew half made. She passed it over before he spoke, and he raised an eyebrow. "You remembered?" "Stayed," he nodded, taking the cup gently. "Yeah, I needed a quiet place to think." And just like before, he walked back to that same table, the broken-legged one by the window. He pulled out his notebook again and began writing. Mila's single quotes. Coworker Donnie nudged her from the back. "Okay, you have to tell me. Is that who I think it is?" "Depends who you think it is," Mila said, playing it cool. "That's Keanu freaking Reeves." Mila gave a small shrug. "He's just a guy who likes cinnamon." Donnie narrowed her eyes. "Oh, come on, he's been here 2 days in a row. He's totally into you." Mila laughed. "No, he's kind. That's all." But somewhere deep down, something fluttered. Because it wasn't just that he returned, it was the way he looked at her sketches again. This time, he picked up the book without asking. He turned the pages slowly, pausing at each drawing. There was a softness in his eyes. It's not pity, not performance. Just real attention. Mila watched from behind the counter, pretending to wipe down the surface. An older man came in around noon and ordered black coffee. He noticed Keanu sitting by the window. His eyes lit up and he quickly took out his phone. Mila stepped in before he could move closer. "He's just here for some peace," she said gently. The man blinked. "I just want a photo, please," she said, lowering her voice. "He's not bothering anyone. Let's not bother him." The man paused, sighed, and put his phone away. "Didn't know baristas were security now," he muttered. "Only for the quiet ones," she said with a smirk. Back at the window, Keanu looked up and caught her eye. He nodded once. A silent thank. "You after the lunch rush?" Mila walked over again. He motioned toward the chair. "Want to sit?" She hesitated. "I have 5 minutes." "5 minutes is enough," he said. They sat, this time. He flipped her sketchbook around and pointed at a drawing of a girl on a park bench, holding an umbrella in sunlight. "This one's different." "Oh, it feels like hope," he said. Mila swallowed. "I drew it after my dad left." Keanu didn't flinch, didn't ask questions. He just waited. "He said he was going to buy groceries," she continued, "and he never came back." "I was 12. I'm sorry," he said. She looked at him. I used to think I wasn't worth staying for. He nodded slowly, then pointed to the drawing again. This says otherwise. She didn't cry. She almost did. Then Keanu reached into his coat pocket again, pulled out a small folded envelope. This is for you. Mila frowned. What is it? Don't open it now. Wait until you're alone. Why? Because you'll need silence, he said gently. She stared at the envelope. Her fingers shook slightly as she took it. No, he interrupted softly. But I wanted to. Before she could say more, he stood up, nodded, and left. No big exit, no goodbye, just gone. That night, after her shift, Mila sat in her room under the yellow desk lamp she used for drawing. She held the envelope for a full 10 minutes before opening it. Inside was a simple note written in black ink. You have something powerful. Don't hide it. Don't give it away too fast. And never ever bury it. Kebenneth, the note was a single. Name and number, a contact at an art foundation in New York. The words felt unreal. Her. Hands trembled as she reread the note again and again. No promises. No guarantees, but a door. And he had handed her the key. Outside her window, the city kept buzzing. Cars moved, sirens WHIN. But for the first time in a long time, Mila felt still inside. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew this something had shifted because a stranger didn't just see her. He believed in her, and sometimes that was enough to light the fire back up. Mila didn't sleep much that night. She kept reading the note over and over, tracing the handwriting like it held some kind of secret code. The contact name at the bottom, Ellie Hart, Nick felt too big, too real. She Googled the name just to make sure she wasn't dreaming. Ellie Hart ran a nonprofit art collective that helped young, underrepresented artists find grants, mentorship, and gallery space. Her work had been featured in major magazines. Her name wasn't just real, it was respected, and somehow Keanu had connected Mila to her with one quiet envelope. By morning, Mila had almost convinced herself not to call. What if it was a mistake? What if Ellie had no idea who she was? What if Keanu had just written it out of kindness, not meaning for her to actually follow through? But deep down, she knew that wasn't true. So with shaking fingers, she sent a message. Hi, Ellie. My name is Mila. Keanu gave me your name. He said you might be open to seeing some of my sketches. She held her breath. No reply. Minutes passed. Then an hour. She was already dressed and heading to the cafe when her phone buzzed. Hi, Mila. I've been waiting to hear from you. Keanu told me about you yesterday. Can you send a few pieces? Mila stopped walking. Right there in the middle of the sidewalk, coffee in one hand and phone in the other. Heart pounding like a drum, waiting to hear from you. She sent 3 pieces. The girl on the bench, the woman at the train station, and the city night with no faces. She didn't expect much after that. People said nice things all the time, and then moved on. But 15 minutes later, Ellie replied again. These are haunting. In the best way? Are you free to Zoom this weekend? Mila stood frozen for a full 10 seconds before typing back, yes. A single word. A single door opening when she walked into the cafe. Donnie was already on bar duty. The jazz playlist still looped, and the window table was empty. For a moment, Mila felt a strange ache. As if she had expected him to be waiting again. He wasn't. But she understood why. He didn't need to stay. He had already given what he came to give. The rest was up to her now. She worked the register, poured drinks, wiped tables, but her mind wasn't really there. Kept drifting back to Ellie's message. To the sketches, to the way Keanu had said you really should like, it wasn't a suggestion. It's a truth. Around 2 in the afternoon, a delivery guy came in with a box. You, Mila? Yeah. Got a package for you. She signed, confused. Ordered anything? She opened the box behind the counter and froze. Inside was a small, hand-bound notebook. Leather cover, no brand, no logo. Inside, the first page had a message. Fill this with who you are. The world is waiting. Kebenneth, the The notebook was a single pencil, dark charcoal, sharpened by hand. Mila stared at it. No cameras had caught him. No one posted about the second visit. There were no viral tweets. It wasn't about that. He had just remembered her quietly. Without show, she turned the page and began to draw. First sketch wasn't perfect. It was a reflection of the coffee shop window, the same scene she looked at every day. But this time, through his eyes, calm, still full of small beauty that night. After her shift, she set up her Zoom call with Ellie. The woman on the other end of the screen had silver-streaked hair and warm eyes. She smiled the moment Mila's camera turned on. "You have something rare," Ellie said. Mila shrugged. "It's just sketches." "No," Ellie said, leaning forward. "It's truth." They talked for 45 minutes about pain, about art, about how sometimes the people who are the quietest have the most to say. By the end, Ellie gave her a challenge. "Send me 10 pieces by the end of the month. Not your prettiest, your truest. Don't draw what looks good. Draw what hurts." Mila nodded. And for the first time in years, she felt like maybe she wasn't wasting her time. The next few days blurred. She still worked the cafe, still steamed milk and made syrup hearts on cappuccinos. But in every quiet moment, she drew. She drew on breaks. She drew while waiting for her bus. She drew at night. Their legs curled under her and music low in the background. Keanu didn't come back. Not that week, not the next. And slowly, the ache of his absence faded into something else. Not disappointment, but gratitude. He had appeared when she needed someone most. And then, like a soft storm, he passed. But the change remained. One afternoon, Donnie found her sketching in the back. "You okay?" "Yeah," Mila said. "You look different. I feel different." Donnie leaned in. "I still think he was into you." Mila laughed. Maybe he just saw something I forgot I had. The same thing, maybe." Mila smiled. The end of the month came fast. She scanned her 10 pieces and sent them to Ellie. No filter, no polish, just raw lines and truth. Within hours, Ellie responded, "These are ready. I want to show them. Let's talk about your first small exhibit." Mila didn't cry, but she closed her eyes and breathed. This was real. And not because she chased it, but because someone paused long enough to tell her she was seen, and sometimes that's what changed everything. The first time Mila saw her sketches on a wall that wasn't in her bedroom or behind a coffee counter, her hands started to sweat. The gallery wasn't big. It was tucked between an old bookstore and a florist, hidden from the busy downtown foot traffic. It smelled faintly like old paper and fresh paint. And there they were, her 10 pieces, framed simply, hanging on clean white walls with little nameplates beneath. Each one Mila cast her eyes over them like she was meeting them for the first time. She didn't feel proud at first. She felt exposed. They weren't perfect. Some of the lines were messy. One of the drawings still had a smudge from where she spilled tea. The bench drawing, the one she'd made after her dad left, hadn't been touched up. She had left the pencil just as it was, raw, uneven. But Ellie had insisted. "Don't touch them," she'd said. "They let people see what you felt." Mila stood in the middle of the room, surrounded by strangers walking through. A few stopped. Some whispered. One woman stared at a piece of a child behind a window for nearly 5 minutes before wiping her eye and walking on. No one knew Mila was the artist. She hadn't told anyone at the cafe, not even Donnie. She wasn't sure why. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was the need to hold something close before the world took it away. Ellie joined her with a gentle pat on the shoulder. "You did this. I feel like I'm dreaming. You're not." Mila smiled. But there was still someone missing. And she didn't know if he would ever come back. She checked the door a few times that night, glanced outside, listened for the familiar soft steps and worn black coat. But Keanu never walked in. Not that night. Not even when people began to whisper her name. Online, someone had found her sketches posted on the gallery's site. They shared a photo with a caption, "From barista to artist in under a month." Mila's art feels like remembering someone you loved and lost. Within days, Her inbox began to fill, first with kind words, then with opportunities. A small art magazine asked for an interview. A college student from Ohio asked if she could use Mila's work in her thesis on urban loneliness. Even a brand reached out, asking if she would license one of her pieces for a notebook. Cover. Mila said no to that one. She wasn't ready for her pain to be sold in bulk, but every message reminded her of something important. People felt things when they looked at her drawings, and that was all she'd ever wanted. One rainy morning, Mila walked into the cafe like usual. Same apron, same bar setup, same sleepy music, but something was different. On the bulletin board near the window, tucked between flyers for band gigs and tutoring ads, was a photo. A blurry photo of her and Keanu. From the second day he'd come in, she recognized it immediately. She was mid-laugh, holding his cinnamon drink. He was just smiling, watching her. Someone had taken it quietly. Mila frowned. No name, no caption, just the photo, pinned up like a secret. She left it there, a week later. A small envelope showed up at the cafe, addressed to her, same handwriting, inside. Was another note? You looked lighter in that photo. I think that means something. Beneath the note was a second one. This one had only one sentence. I'll be back when the timing's right. Mila stared at the words. Then she folded the paper and put it in her sketchbook. Right behind the drawing of the girl on the bench. Donnie noticed the shift in Mila that week. You're glowing, she said. Maybe I'm just tired. No, Donnie said. You're becoming who you were always meant to be. Mila didn't argue. She knew Donnie was right. Each day, she poured coffee with more calm. Each night, she drew with more purpose. Her life hadn't exploded overnight. She still cleaned the milk frother and counted tips. Her rent still came due. But now, there was something solid in her chest, not just hope direction. One afternoon, Ellie called. How do you feel about New York? Mila laughed. I feel like it's big and cold. Well, there's an opportunity. Another show, a mentor, maybe more. Mila didn't answer right. Away. I'm not asking you to leave everything, Ellie said. I'm asking if you want to go further. Mila thought of the photo on the bulletin board, of the note in her sketchbook, of the cinnamon drinks and quiet. Kindness, then, she said. Let's talk details. That night, she started a new sketch. It was different. It wasn't about pain. It was about movement. A girl on a bike, hair wild in the wind, eyes closed. Riding forward like the road was hers, and she realized something. Maybe he wasn't the whole story. Maybe it was just the beginning. Mila stood at the window of the small apartment in Brooklyn. The city below moved fast, honking cars, shouting kids, bikes weaving between yellow taxis. Everything was noise and movement, and yet, inside her apartment, there was stillness. She hadn't brought much from home. Just a few clothes, her sketchbooks, and the charcoal pencil Keanu had given her. She hadn't used it yet, not because she was saving it, but because something about it felt like a promise. Promises had waited the first few weeks in New York were strange. She didn't have a regular cafe job anymore. Ellie had connected her with a gallery residency. It meant she had a studio space with good light and too much silence. She missed the clatter of cups, the hum of conversation, the smell of burnt espresso. But she also felt something new. Freedom. No one expected her to play small anymore. Her mornings started with walks through Prospect Park. Her afternoons were for drawing. Her evenings were spent trying to remember that this was real. Sometimes she still asked herself. It all began with a joke about messy hair. But deep down, she knew it started long before that. It started the day she realized she had something worth saying. The art residency was a challenge. Not because she didn't know what to draw, but because for the first time people were watching. Not customers on lunch breaks. Not passers-by, critics, curators, other artists. Some praised her. Some were cold. One woman looked at her newest piece. Faceless crowd drawn in smoky grand said, "It's too much emotion. People won't understand." Mila didn't reply, because that was the point. Not everyone had to understand. They just had to feel. One evening, after a long studio session, Mila sat on the floor of her apartment with her legs crossed, sketchbook open in her lap. She took out the charcoal pencil, the one Keanu had given her, and finally, she let herself draw with it. The image that came wasn't planned. Her hand moved almost on its own. What emerged was a quiet man sitting at a corner table by a window, coat slightly wrinkled, hair falling wild around his face. A small cup in his hand, an eye soft present. Patient. She didn't write a title on the page. She just looked at it for a long time. The next day, she brought it to the studio and pinned it to the wall. Nothing else. No explanation. It's just the image. People came and stared. One man tilted his head. This feels like memory. Mila smiled. Yeah, it does. 2 days later, she got a package, no return name. No note this time. Inside was a small framed photo, a picture of her gallery wall in the original cafe. Someone had taken it before the show ended and taped to the back. A line from a poem. You were never invisible. They just didn't know how to. Look, Mila sat with that for hours. Because it wasn't just a gift, it was recognition. And though he still hadn't appeared, his presence hadn't left. New York wasn't easy. There were days she felt like running back. Days she missed the comfort of the espresso machine and Dana's jokes, but then there were moments when she stood in the middle of a gallery room and watched strangers pause at her drawings. Really pause, not scroll, not skim, but stand still, because something in her work touched them. And she realized this wasn't just about art, this was about being seen, heard, felt one night. She got a call from Ellie. You've been invited to speak at the winter exhibit, Ellie said. Mila froze. Me? Speak. Just a few minutes. Share your story, your journey. Have to be perfect. Mila hadn't spoken in front of a crowd since high school. Even then, her voice had trembled so much her teacher had read half the paper for her. But this time, she said yes. Because sometimes the only way forward was through the fear. When the night of the event came, she wore a black dot, not to hide, but to feel grounded. The gallery was fuller than she expected. Lights. Warm. People dressed in shades of curiosity and money. Her art hung along the far wall. When the time came, Ellie introduced her simply, this is Mila. She used to pour coffee. Now she pours truth. Mila stepped up, hands slightly shaking, heart pounding, but her voice didn't crack. I thought I had nothing important to say, she began. I thought I was just another face in a crowd, invisible, small. But then someone paused long enough to really look. He didn't fix my life. He didn't give me a job. He just saw something in me I couldn't see in myself. People listened, not out of politeness, but because the room had gone quiet. All want to be heard, she said. Even if we never speak? After the event, dozens came to thank her. A young man said her story reminded him of his sister. An older woman said she hadn't drawn since college, but now she would. Mila smiled through it all. But her eyes kept drifting to the back of the room, where a man stood alone. He wore a coat slightly, too, worn for the weather, his hair wild, his face calm. She took a step forward, heart THUDD. But then a group moved between them, and when she looked again, he was gone. The next morning, Mila stood in the gallery before it opened. No crowds, no music. Just the soft hum of the heater and the sound of her own breathing. She walked slowly past each of her drawings. She stopped at the newest one, the man at the table drawn. With Keanu's pencil, she stared at it, searching for something, maybe a sign. Maybe a trace of that quiet figure from last night. She was sure it had been him. She wanted to believe it, but maybe she had imagined it. Maybe her heart had filled in the gaps her eyes couldn't prove. Still, something about his presence, even for a second, had made her feel like she wasn't alone in the room. Her phone buzzed. A message from Donnie. You crushed it last night, people. Keep tagging you on Insta. You're famous now. Mila smiled, typing back. I miss you. Tell the espresso machine I still hate it. Donnie replied with a photo of the cafe as cinnamon jar and a caption that read, "Reserved for K. Mala." Felt a sting of joy. Some places stay with you. Some people too. She had one more day left in New York. Before flying home for a short break, the gallery was closing for renovations. Ellie had already lined up another small show for her in the spring, but Mila needed air, needed grounding, needed to feel her old city beneath her feet again. The flight was early. Sunrise still stretched sleepy light across the sky. When her plane touched down, the city looked the same, but she was different now as she walked back into the cafe. The bell over the door rang like a memory. Donnie turned, then gasped. No freaking way. They hugged too tight and too long. Everything smelled the same burnt coffee. Cinnamon, tired dreams. Mila looked around. The window table was empty. Donnie pulled out a folded napkin from her apron. "This showed up 2 days ago," she said. "No." One saw, who dropped it off. Mila unfolded it carefully. Inside was a sketch of a straighter ST. Beneath it, 2 figures sat on a curb. One holding a cup, the other holding silence. Underneath, just a few words. "Sometimes the wind brings you back, Camilla." Didn't cry, but she sat down. Right at that wobbly table, she didn't ask anyone to fix the leg. She just let it rock a little. The day passed slowly. Some regulars noticed her. Others didn't. But every person she saw felt clearer now, like life had sharpened since she left around sunset. The door opened quietly. She didn't look up right away. Not until she heard his voice. "Do you still have that cinnamon thing?" Her heart caught. She turned slowly. There he was. Same coat, same calm, same wild hair. "I think the wind won again," he added. She laughed, soft, full. "True, yeah," she said. "But it's a good look on you." He stepped forward. "Closer then." "Before I saw the gallery," he said. She nodded. "I thought maybe you did. You found your voice." "I think you helped me find it." He didn't answer. Not with words. He just pulled out a folded piece of paper. "This is for you." She opened it. Inside was a sketch, but it wasn't drawn by her. It was of her standing at a gallery wall, facing one of her own drawings, captured in a moment of stillness. He had signed it at the bottom, not with his full name. Just one letter. Cade Malay looked up at him, his eyes full but steady. "Thank you," she whispered. He shrugged, almost shy. "I didn't do much." "You stayed." She said. "You saw me." He smiled. "You were never invisible." They sat together at the table for hours. No cameras, no fame, just 2 people, sharing space, stories, and silence. And outside, the wind moved gently through the streets, not fighting this time, just flowing, as if it too understood, sometimes all it takes is one small moment of kindness to change the course of someone's life forever.